Hi guys, welcome back. I've got a scene card that we're going to use some lawn fawn dies here. So I'm starting with the mushroom border dies and all the pieces that go with it, as well as the birch tree dies. And the stamp sets are the clearly besotted, feeling fruity, and a couple of images from Forest Feast. I also land up using the sentiment from Forest Feast as well, just because I thought it suited it better. So I'm going to use some oxide inks today, so fired brick, ripe persimmon and wild honey, and I will swap those around, so I'll start with my wild honey. And I've got a piece of Tim Holtz, this is the watercolor paper that he has that's already pre-cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm just using my grass border as a guide to where I need to start. You don't need to ink the whole thing if you're creating, or if you're going to be putting something over the bottom half, you know, or certain sections of your panel. And I've just got some of the wild honey on. Now I'm going in with the ripe persimmon, and I'm just going to blend back and forth with those colors until the blend is smooth, or as smooth as I'm happy with. And then I'm going to take the fired brick and just go back and forth just like I've done with the others, and get a nice blend going on there, and trying not to get too many lines, because it drives me mad when there's lines when you're trying to get this nice ombre kind of, or this, not ombre, but this nice smooth blend. So I'm just going back and forth, and I you know, until I was happy with the way that the colors and the amount of each color on there. Once I was happy with that, then that was fine, but just go back and forth until you're happy. And then before I use my distress sprayer with some water to create some texture in the background, I'm just going to clean up my mat and then spritz this. Now I used a paper towel after a few seconds, about 30 seconds, to blot that up. It leaves it more of a white tone. So I will go back in a minute and just, without re-inking my blender tools, go back over with the same color in the same area with the same color, if that makes sense. So fired brick on fired brick, and it just tones down that whiteness of the sort of splatter that's in the background. I could have also just heat set it without blotting up the excess water, and that would give it a nice tone as well, like tone on tone, and that's a cool effect. So for this bit, I'm going to start putting together my mushrooms border, and I've cut the height to what I want it, but I have left it wider than the piece of cardstock so that I can trim it down to fit. And I'm using some Stampin' Up! Cardstock, I believe, today. And I thought the pinky mushroom heads would be just a change from the red ones. I just want them in the background as something subtle, just to add to the background, a bit more texture, a bit more interest. But I didn't want them to be bright red, because there's also a lot of red in the little images that I've already coloured. So I decided on this pinky colour, and some mushrooms have that pinky tone underneath, don't they? So that's my thought process anyway. So I just added on the mushrooms that were going to fit across there. There was no point adding the extra two, because they're going to get cut off. So that was pointless. So added them in there, and then I will come back to them in a second. But the tree stump that I'd stamped, I'd used a Stampin' Up! Ink for this. I think it was, I want to say soft suede. But I'm not sure. It could have been I don't think it was crumb cake, but anyway, and because it is water reactive, because it is a dye ink, although it's not as reactive as a distress ink, I'm just using this aqua marker pen thing that I can never remember the name of, just to drag the color out. It's not a watercolor paper, but it just, at least it doesn't look so white. It looks more like a tree stump than something I've forgotten to color in. And then the mushrooms I didn't think stood out enough, so I brought in some spun sugar in oxide, distress oxide, and that still wasn't standing out enough for me. So I then bring in the new colour, and it is the perfect pink in between. It just is, and I'm in love with it. And so I will bring that in, and that's Kitsch Flamingo. And although it's still very subtle in the background, it makes a difference to the mushrooms when you see that. You might not be able to even pick it up on camera, but it's there, and it made a much better difference than the spun sugar. Spun sugar was almost too close in color to the cardstock, so it didn't work in this instance, although it's a beautiful color as well. So I did that to get them just highlighted a little bit, and now I'm going to stick this to the base piece and start to put my background together. Something I should have done, which I always bang on about, is that when you start inking something, you need to ink everything, and I totally forgot to ink my grass, so it looks a little off in the end. So I may go back, obviously off camera now because I'd filmed this, and just add some like a darkish distress oxide just to the base of the card. You'll see that once we get there. The trees that I'm adding here, the birch trees, I cut them in a brown, a dark brown. It's like a chocolatey sort of color. I didn't ink the edge of anything on there because to me I don't think you'd see it, although an oxide would stand out on top of it, so that might have worked. But I actually quite like just almost like there's the brown tone to them, but they're almost like a silhouette in the background, and I quite like that. So now that this has dried a little bit, or the glue's dried a bit, I'm using my gigantic Tim Holtz scissors and they are huge, but they are awesome for things like this, just to trim the edges so that everything's, you know, like the scene's put together and there's nothing overhanging anywhere. So it's starting to come together, but this is, yeah, my grass needed some ink and I didn't even bother in the end, but it's fine. So these little characters, the mushrooms and the tree trunk were from the Forest Feast stamp set of Lawn Fawns, and I also used the sentiment from that stamp set in a minute. And the, yeah, so the little mushrooms are going to be like little chairs for them to sit on, and then the clearly besotted characters, I had actually stamped and inked and and painted with some Jello Mission Gold paints. I stamped a bunch of them. I think I've said that in a few other videos with my clearly besotted. I stamped a whole bunch of clearly besotted stuff and just sat one day and painted. I think it's good therapy sometimes to do things like that, so that's what I tend to do. And also, if you're not making videos like I do, then this is just a good way to get some therapy in. Just to don't think about the project you're trying to make with it, just sit, stamp, paint, or color, or whatever. I think it's good to do. And then I popped up my mushrooms, which I actually coloured with some Copic markers, because the mushrooms and the stump were actually an afterthought. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with all these characters other than I had them in this little foresty sort of feel. But I didn't quite know what I was going to do, and then I suddenly remembered the stamp set. So these are just coloured really quickly with some Copic markers. So they were done at a different time to the painting of the mice. And I love that these mice are all dressed up in fruit. Just animals dressed as food. I don't know. There's something about it. Makes me giggle and makes me happy. So I think they're so sweet. So I'm just trying to work out where to put them all, because even though I've got 3 little chairs there, I didn't want any of their ears and their heads to block the ones in the background. So I'm just trying to figure out where I'm going to put all of them. And the 2 guys in the back, like the other side of the table if you like, they're stuck flat, and then the guys on the table, on the chairs, sorry, the little mushroom chairs, they'll be popped up and sort of stuck to the chair as if they're sitting on them. And I love the little banana guy. It's so funny. I guess you could use these in a Halloween-y sort of theme, because they're dressed up like little, you know, like you would for Halloween. I don't know if I'd dress up as fruit for Halloween, but it's cute. So and I just the sentiments that come with the stamp set are very cute as well, but because there wasn't a sentiment that for me matched all of them and sort of tied them all together, it might have, there's one that sort of says you know, thanks a melon and things like that, so it works for some of the characters, but I didn't find that there was enough there to work for all of them, because I'm using all of them in one card. So I decided to use, like I say, the Forest Feast stamp set for the sentiment in the end. and within the stamp set there's an apple and a watermelon, so I decided to just add that to the front to the table. It's either a centerpiece or it's their food ready to be eaten, who knows. And I've never used this. I've not used this this sentiment I'm stamping now. I've not used this sentiment yet from this stamp set, and I thought it was really funny. It's just something that I would say, now let's eat. So I was trying to find something to go on top of it. This is not a you know, we're still in winter, going into spring hopefully at some point, but we're not in that sort of Thanksgiving-y autumn time of year. But I just think that saying thank you all year is a good thing. It doesn't need to be specifically, and obviously for me, I don't celebrate Thanksgiving because that's not my tradition. So for me it's you know, a thankful card or a grateful thank you card is always welcome for anybody, I think, especially at the moment with the way the world is. So I thought, although it looks very autumnal, it's not necessarily meant for that. So that wasn't the idea behind it. So anyway, and that's pretty much it. It's oh, I'm going to take a glaze pen. I forgot about this. It's just a Sakura glaze pen in black, and it's just I'm going over the eyes, the sort of rounder eyes. Some of them have sort of got the eyes shut, like they've got little eyelashes and things. They're very cute, and I'll show you that in a second. But I just go over them with a glaze pen, and it just highlights them even more. It just sort of brings them to life almost. And it does make a big difference if you do have something like that you can use on a character. Even if it's not a glaze pen, even if you just used a really fine mark, either a marker or a very fine pen in black, just to re-highlight those eyes, it makes a big difference to making them pop on that on your card. So I hope you like this. I hope you've liked this little, almost like it wasn't really a series of Clearly Besotted, but I had a bunch of her stamps, and I love them, so I had to make a bunch of cards with them. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next one, guys. See you later. Bye.